Jonathan, can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. So welcome everyone to another episode of Pride in the Living Room, Jewmos edition. So just a quick reminder, Pride in the Living Room was founded by Israeli LGBT task force Agudah in memory of the 2009 Tel Aviv Gay Center shooting and the Jerusalem Pride Parade stabbing in 2015. And Ha'agudah uh, used these moments to create this event, which seeks to share the stories of LGBT Jews to encourage empathy and community. And I've been inspired to take this initiative back home to Jewmos. And all of that said, it is my absolute pleasure to invite Jonathan to the stage to share his incredible story. So over to you, Jonathan.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the introduction. I'm a little odd sitting here as I don't think of myself as anything special. I'm just a Jew born in New York, spent most of my life in Worcester, Massachusetts, and then moved to Melbourne, Australia about 10 years ago. But my Jewish story, which starts way back in New York City, at the Park Avenue Synagogue, I'm going to hold off for a minute because I want to tell you about my gay Jewish story. Back in the 90s, I was bringing students to Melbourne to study and look at social science projects. I was a professor in those days. And I met a group called Aleph, Michael Barnett, no relation of mine. And Aleph was amazing. It was a place for gay Jews to be out and gay Jews to participate in a community life, closed community life, in that it was their own community. But in those discussions, I attended a Yom Kippur service at one of the local progressive synagogues here at the Leo Beck Center. And the service was very nice. It actually wasn't at the center. It was at a town hall. And I'll never forget, they brought me a siddur so I would have something to pray with because I was visiting from America. And they dropped it off at my hotel room before the holiday, so everything was cool. And I got there and I attended the service and it was fabulous. And at the end of the service, the president of the shul got up and he thanked the rabbi who was visiting from America, funnily enough, and he thanked everyone on the committee, and then he thanked his partner, John. And I said, John, you mean this man's gay? Wow, and he's president of a synagogue. How bizarre. So I went and met him and talked with him, and I went back to America and did my usual thing. And at that time, I belonged to a small Reform congregation in Westborough, Massachusetts, and Congregation B'nai Shalom. And I was there for the next High Holy Day service, and I noticed that the building was overcrowded. And I said to Rabbi Deborah Hagen, I said, Rabbi, we have too many people in the shul. We have to do something about that. She said, great. I'm putting together a fundraising committee. How do you like to chair it? We need to increase the size of the building. And I said, oh, all right. Anyway, long story short, by 1999, I was president of the shul. And we had a fundraising event out in a country club area. And we went there, we had a fabulous comedian, a Jewish comedian, of course. And everyone made me sit in the front row. So I'm in the front row, and there's a congregant and her husband next to me. And the comedian says to me, gee, you're not being very friendly with your wife. And I've got the microphone in my hand, and there are 400 people in the congregation there. And I said, well, she's not my wife, she's his wife. My partner is back home, and he would object to be called my wife. In those days, of course, we didn't have gay marriage. Well, that was my coming out story to the congregation. And I was the first openly gay president of a shul in central Massachusetts. And that was sort of the start of my open gay Jewish story, which is kind of interesting. I went on from there and became the fundraiser for the chair of fundraising for the Jewish Federation of Central Massachusetts, and we raised more money than we had for over 10 years. And it didn't matter who it was. They were quite happy to meet with me, and I include the Chabad, I include all the ultra-Orthodox, everyone we had in the community was happy to meet with me because we had one goal, raising money for Israel and for the local community, and it didn't matter that I was gay. And that was absolutely great. Of course, that's how it should be. And today, this doesn't sound remarkable, but in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was quite remarkable. Shortly thereafter, I became the treasurer of Keshet US. So at that time, this organization called Keshet, as you know, it's rainbow in Hebrew, had started a goal of educating kids in the Jewish community about how to welcome gay children into our day schools, how to welcome the GLBT community into our Jewish community. And that became Keshet's focus. It started in Boston, and when it became national, I was the first national treasurer. About 2010, I left. And I left because I made Aliyah to Melbourne, Australia. I had been coming to Australia for many years, and I loved Australia, and I loved Melbourne. And I came to this community, and I've been here ever since. I now run a business, a fire safety engineering business. But in my journey from when I arrived 10 years ago to where I am now, I started Keshet Australia, again with the focus of making the Jewish community a warm, welcome place for the LGBT members of the community. I've been on the director of a local synagogue, Temple Beth Israel. I've been the president of Progressive Judaism Victoria. And of course, I've done all this as an openly gay man. We've done some amazing things. Keshet is now a member of the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, and the first LGBT group to be recognized. And the best thing was that we were elected as a member organization through a unanimous vote, which was just so thrilling, because the whole point of this is that being part of the LGBT community should not mean that you're any different from any other part of the community. We're all Jews, and we're part of the Jewish community, and Melbourne in particular is so warm and welcoming. Now, of course, there are a few people, there's still some problems, there are always problems, but there are problems with Jews that come, pick your favorite country. And well, gee, they're not from where my parents came from, or people that speak with funny American accents. I probably get more grief because of my loud New York accent than anything else. But it is a warm and welcoming community. And being a gay man has not been an issue at all. It hasn't been positive either. It's just there. It doesn't matter that I'm gay. And I think that that's the best part. We've been able to do some things. We have a LGBT festival called Midsummer Festival in Melbourne. And for many years, Keshet had a booth. And it was just where we would hand out information about which synagogues were particularly warm and welcoming. We had all the progressive synagogues, but we also had 2 Orthodox mainstream synagogues, as well as other Jewish groups that said, come to us, come be part of us, we welcome you. I think it was the first year, and I had a rainbow kippah on, and a young man, maybe 17, 18, came running over, and he said, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. There's a gay Jewish group. I'm gay. Where do I get a rainbow kippah like that?" He was so excited, right? It was his eyes opened because he realized as a gay Jew, he actually had a place. There were others of us out there. Now I think we're not going to surprise anyone because we're out, we're proud, we're there. It wasn't always like that, but it is now for most young people. There are still we still have issues with the transgender community. We still have issues with some of the ultra-Orthodox, but by far the vast majority of the Jewish community is warm and welcoming. We have a Pride Shabbat at Temple Beth Israel every year. I remember I went up to the rabbi and I said, "I think we should have a Pride Shabbat." And Rabbi Gersh Lazaro said, "Oh, what a good idea. Let's do that. Can we tie it in with the Midsummer Festival?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it on that Shabbat." So we did. Now, normally on a Friday night service at TBI, we get maybe 50, 75 people, maybe 100 if there's a big B'nai Mitzvah the next day. But at our first Pride Shabbat, well, first the scramble was to find a Pride flag to fly with a Magen David on it, all right? You'd think they would be easy to find, but they were hard to find in Melbourne. We had to ship one down from Sydney. So in front of the synagogue, we have the Pride flag flying with, of course, the Israeli flag. And we invited the local politicians, and many came. Many of the local members of parliament came, all the Jewish ones, and some of the non-Jewish ones. And we had a reception so that we could talk before Shabbat, and we could have videotaping and that kind of thing. And then we had the service. And I looked around, and that this synagogue, which was maximum 100 people on a Friday night, had 350 people. What an amazing turnout from the LGBT community, from the straight community, from the Jewish community, from our community that came together, right, to celebrate Pride with all of us. And it was just so exciting. In a way, that's been the culmination of what we've done here in Melbourne. The work never stops. What is being done now, we have many different groups. The Jewish lesbians in Melbourne, they've been around for 25 years, and they meet on a regular basis as their own entity. When there are Jewish community events, the Keshet and other LGBT groups are invited and are welcome and are a warm part of those events. It wasn't like that 10 years ago. If you turn back the clock to the 90s, when I first had those discussions with Michael Barnett, it certainly wasn't like that. So going back to that, it was really bizarre that I had to leave New York, leave Massachusetts, both the liberal bastions in America, and come here and meet my first Jewish gay president. And it was his inspiration. It was the fact that he could be the president of a large synagogue and he could be open and gay, which really opened my eyes, that I didn't have to be in the closet anymore with my community activities. I could be out and I could be proud, and and it was just absolutely wonderful. The journey wasn't always that way. Back in high school, when I realized I was, in those days I said bisexual because I tried not to admit I was gay. So I wasn't a true bisexual, I was gay, I just couldn't admit it. In high school, I said, well, gee, should I be an engineer? I'm really good at maths and science. Or should I be a rabbi? I was president of my high school, of my synagogue youth group, and I really was involved in the Jewish community as a teenager. I said, no, I'm gay, I can't be a rabbi. In fact, by the early by my early 20s, even though I'd been president of Hillel at my university, I said, you know, as a gay man, there's no place in the Jewish world for me. And I left. For 4 years, I did nothing that was Jewish, except on Rosh Hashanah. I went to synagogue with my father, but that was all. That was the sole amount of my Jewish activity. And then I met Rabbi Hagen, who I mentioned earlier. And she was playing guitar at a Hanukkah party, of all things. And I met her and I said, wow, woman rabbi, that's interesting. So remember, this is in the 70s where it was still very new. And I said, wow, she's quite nice. And I went and talked to her and she brought me back. I said to myself, well, if there's a world for a woman rabbi, maybe there's a world for a gay Jewish man as well in the community. And I just got lucky. I found a wonderful person who became the inspiration for for bringing me back into the community and community activity. And it's just been a wonderful journey ever since. It was difficult at times coming out to my parents. Of course, everything has to be Jewish in a Jewish world. I came out on Rosh Hashanah. Might as well start the new year the right way. There had been an argument at the table, not an argument, one of these lively family discussions as we all have. And my mother, who used to like to fish, had commented about going to Provincetown, which is a very sort of a gay resort area. And one of the other guests at the dinner table said, oh, you know, all those people that go swishing down the street, they sort of ruin the neighborhood. And I objected, as one might imagine. My sisters, who I was out to, were sure I was going to come out at the dinner table, which I didn't. But when I came back later that evening, I'd gone out for a walk. My mother met me at the door and she said, boy, you were pretty rude to Sid last night when you called him a bigot because he was making homophobic comments. What is it to you anyway? I said, well, I was defending gays because I am one. I'll never forget those words. Not a good way to come out to your mother. Anyway, 4 hours of tears and whatever. It was pretty rough on her. It was rough on me. And she said, whatever you do, don't tell your father because you go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah and it's his favorite day to be with you and I don't want it ruined. All right. So we're coming back from shul and Dad said to me, well, you really upset your mother last night when you told her you were gay. I said, oh, so what do you think? He said, well, that's funny. You don't look it. Anyway, that was about the total response of what he thought. He really couldn't have cared less about my orientation. And my mother got over the fact she wasn't going to have grandchildren with me. And that was okay too. When my mother died just before I moved to Australia, and she had cancer, and a few months before she died, she said, I want to come to Boston. I want to visit our cousins there. I want to see you. I want to see Brian. Now, Brian was my partner for 15 years. And he was my partner when I came out to my parents. And my mother at first had said, I don't ever want to see that man again. And here, as she's dying, she says, I want to see him because I love him very much. And I really thought the two of you were really great together. It was really a very warm and very positive event. And it wasn't the first time she said good things about him, but it was a point to say, this is my last visit, my last chance, and I want to be positive and say it. So I've had a lot of both personal stories that have been difficult like any other gay person. At the same time, my ability or my opportunity, I should say, to work with the community has been great. And the Jewish community has been extremely warm and embracing, as I said. And it's been a journey, and I've met some wonderful people. And I think the journey is continuing. I'm only 68. I've had to back off from some of my activism simply because I'm running a business. But I'm sure when I retire, I'll be back and I'll be active some more. So I don't know if you have any questions or if there's anything else you'd like me to say.
Well, first of all, Jonathan, I want to just thank you for talking us through your incredible story. I have a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Well, first, I wanted to ask, you've been involved in so many Jewish organizations. You mentioned Aleph, Keshet, Leo Beck, TBI, Hillel back in the States. And in each of these organizations, you've had a position where you're able to contribute policy ideas. Maybe it's president, maybe it's on the board. What draws you to those sorts of positions in Jewish organizations?
Well, I'm not the type of person to sit back and watch other people do things. I believe in rolling up my sleeves and getting to work. It's just, I think, part of my nature. My parents were involved in charitable organizations as well, and they were always played an active role. And so perhaps I learned from them. Being gay doesn't mean that I shouldn't have an active role. And the interesting thing is that other than Keshet, both here and in the US, all of the other organizations I've been a leader in, either a president or a director of, have been mainstream non-LGBT organizations. And my sexual orientation has had nothing to do with my ability to become a leader. And again, I think it's an issue of organizations want people that volunteer. One of our biggest problems are finding people are willing to volunteer. I think that when I talk to a lot of LGBT people, they're worried about being involved in a mainstream organization. They feel they won't be welcome. That's not true. If you roll up your sleeves, if you work, if you show you're dedicated to a cause, people don't care in today's world what your orientation is. People want your involvement. And I think that's so important. I'm frustrated when I see that we don't have, and I don't mean to be negative, but young people that are willing to get involved. There's plenty of opportunity, there's plenty of need. When we look at a synagogue, particularly in Australia and particularly in Melbourne, you'll find that young people drop out of the synagogue life, which is fine, and they don't come back until they're married. But if they're LGBT, do they come back when they get married? Right? Particularly if it's an Orthodox synagogue, which might not recognize their marriage per se. They don't feel that they should. They don't feel that they're welcome, but that's not true, all right? You can become involved, and the few naysayers, the few who say, oh, we don't want that gay man, they're usually outvoted. And you'll find that by being a presence, by setting an example, you can do anything that anyone else can. Right? And in fact, perhaps being a gay man in my case has made me stronger than I would have been. And there's nothing negative, it's only positive. So why have I done all of this? Because I believe in community. I believe in, I have something to offer. And if I have something to offer, I should offer it. The something to offer doesn't have to be money. It doesn't actually have to be leadership. It can be just to be a participant. We need participants. We need people that are active. And organizations need money as well. You know, the pink dollar is pretty strong. Not with everyone, but with a lot of people. And so I always ask, please take your pink dollars, give it to a Jewish organization. They need you. And, you know, I think there's tremendous opportunity for people today just like there was when I was young, except I didn't know it, right? I just thought there was no opportunity. I thought I was different and no one wanted me. And that's not true, all right? People want you, if you have the same values and you want to contribute, people absolutely want your involvement.
Very well said. I wanted to ask you as well. So you've been actively involved in the Jewish LGBT GLBT space for a long time, and when you first started, you were speaking about some of the challenges that you faced, some of the 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 conversations you had to have to get things moving, to get things active. I just wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit about how you approached those situations and what gave you strength to keep pursuing in those moments.
I think that's a really, really good question. Thank you. I'm glad you're doing the interviewing. I like that. So when I came to Australia and started Keshet, the real issue was that, all right, the Jewish community here, which has a large progressive community, but is mostly mainstream Orthodox, non-practicing Jews, to be honest, and some ultra-Orthodox. And certainly the Orthodox side of the street was not interested in the LGBT community. And had nothing per se directly against it other than the usual tripe that they like to promote. But they just leave us alone. We'll leave you alone. We don't want to be involved. And in the 90s, when Aleph tried to become a member of the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, they were told, the council was told, if you let this gay group in, then the Orthodox congregations will walk. And as they were the main source of funds and the main stream of Jewish life here, that was a disaster. So when I came here 10 years ago, that was the background. I was told, oh, the progressives are okay, the Orthodox, they won't talk to you, and forget it. We put together a group which included some Orthodox Jews, men and women, and we said, well, what is it the community needs? Where are the issues? There had been a study that looked at youth suicide, particularly LGBT suicide rates, which are so much higher than their straight community. And we looked at that, and we looked at it from a Jewish context. And of course, as Jews, there's nothing more important than life. And we sat down with some of the rabbis, and we started to say, you know that you are not just pushing aside your LGBT members, but many of them will commit suicide. And even if only one does, how can we live with that as a community? And to be honest, that was the approach we took. We basically looked at Jewish values and said, where are the other values? What are the values that keep us as a community going? And clearly being homophobic is not a value that fits mainstream Judaism. And I say mainstream, and I'm talking about across the spectrum. Remember, when it came time to that vote to let us become a member, let Keshet become a member of the Jewish Community Council, it was unanimous. Not a single Orthodox congregation talked against us because they all realized we had been doing good. We had a meeting with the school counselors, the Jewish day school counselors, to talk about how to deal with the needs of LGBT kids. And we had that meeting at the yeshiva, right, which is unheard of. But we did it, and they welcomed us because they realized by ignoring their children, they were making a huge mistake. There were so many kids that were disappearing and we didn't want them to disappear. They needed to be part of the community. And so frankly, that was the twist. I hate to say there was a twist to it, but that was the twist to open people's minds. And once their minds were open, they haven't closed. When it came for the vote for gay marriage in Australia, the Jewish community was strongly on board. Not at first. There was some vocal against, of course. There was vocal against in all communities. But in the end, when you look at the votes were very positive. Right? The community here is now very warm and welcoming. I mean, I think you found it yourself coming from Perth, that it's quite different. At least I hope you found it's been warm and welcoming for you.
It has, definitely. Did you want to speak further about that?
No, I think that really covers the important thing, and maybe I'll just have some final words, maybe, because I find talking about myself kind of boring, but I was a professor for 30 years. I'm a very successful businessman. I'm an engineer. Perhaps I don't fit the stereotype of a member of the LGBT community. Perhaps as a fire safety engineer, I don't fit the stereotype of a Jew. I don't know of too many Jewish fire safety engineers. In fact, I can only think of one or two out of 500 that I know, which is shocking, actually. I don't think it matters. I think the point is that you can be anything you want to be. And the key is to find something that motivates you, something where you can be proud as a member of the LGBT community. It's not the risk it was, sadly, when I was a kid. It's much, much better now in so many ways, except for our trans members who are still struggling a lot. And we have to work for the transgender community some more. But in general, we've come a long way, and things can always be better, but they'll only be better if people get involved. People need to step up for the leadership, to take a role in whether it's in fundraising or just doing general activities. Just get involved, all right? It's actually rewarding. It's not even hard, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but it is worth doing. And instead of a risk, it's a positive thing that comes out of it. You know, there really is nothing better than feeling when that teenager came up to us and said, wow, there are other gay Jews. You cannot imagine how good that made everyone feel. All right. And I just hope other people can follow in that footstep. Thank you very much for the time to talk about this.
It's my pleasure. I have one final question, if that's okay.
Sure.
But first, I just want to say, you know, when Hanukkah rolls around, if only we have more fire inspectors. When I listen to your story, I listen to what I really take away is someone who has immense passion behind what he does, someone who acknowledges that there's always work to be done, and that you've dedicated so much of your life to helping that change happen. And I think for myself or anyone who has the opportunity to hear your story, those are some of the messages that they'll be able to take away. As a final question, I wanted to ask, can you remind me the name of the female rabbi who you spoke about earlier?
Debbie Hagen.
Debbie Hagen. So I just wanted to ask if you had, I'm not sure if you've recently spoken to her or if she's still with us. If you had the opportunity to speak with her, you know, looking back on the life journey that you've had, what would you say to her?
Well, funnily enough, she and her husband came to Melbourne 2 years ago to visit me. And we were very close. When my mother died, Debbie officiated at the funeral, even though she was a rabbi at another congregation at this point. Sadly, Peter, her husband, is not well, but they came one of their last overseas trips because I didn't really have to say anything because we're just friends. We've kept a warm friendship all these years. So we're talking 40, 45 years of friendship. And it's all because she was a warm person and was just in the right place at the right time. But if I were, and so I don't actually have to say, you don't need to say things to close friends, but if I had to, and she knows the story. She knows that it was her guitar playing when she was still a young rabbinical student that brought me back into the fold. And she would find some way of whatever I said to her, trying to thank her, she would find some way of turning it around and making me feel good, because that's the thing she does. She makes other people feel good. So she's a pretty remarkable woman. I don't think that's the answer you were looking for, but it's sort of a strange relationship. When you meet a warm and wonderful person, it's amazing the impact they have on many people's lives. And, you know, as I said, she had a tremendous impact on me, just getting me back into things and then helping me along the journey. When she left the synagogue, Congregation B'nai Shalom was her first synagogue, and I was the president when she left. We always joke that she ran away from me, but no, her husband took a job in New York. So we've had a warm relationship, and it's been good. And, you know, all I could do is say anybody who, like her, who helps someone else stay in Judaism, that's everything, right? I believe I was just contacted, funnily enough, with a distant cousin, very, very distant, who lives in Melbourne, who I didn't know about, who I learned about from a distant cousin in New Zealand, all right? And all this has happened yesterday, 2 days ago, Friday, actually. And we're a small community, we're a Jewish community, and we, as Jews, I think it's important we stay connected. And what we don't want is people to leave the community. And I guess the words I would say to Debbie is thank you. Thank you for keeping me in the community, because that's really so important. And it's so important for all our LGBT members. We need to keep them in the community, keep them part of us. And so again, Debbie, thanks for that. And I hope everybody else can do the same. Remember, next time that you see an LGBT member, make them understand that they're like everyone else, that they're a Jew and they're part of our community and we want them.
I think that's the perfect way to end our time together. I just want to thank you again, Jonathan. For me personally, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing you talk through your achievements and really the emotions that drive you to do what you do. And here's to sharing our story today and many times in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for arranging this. Perfect.
My pleasure.